The Lord bless His word to us this morning as we finish our series on the book of Judges. Most of us, I think, will recognize the name Justin Bieber. Anyone not know the name Justin Bieber? Yeah, a singer of some fame, born in 1994. He released his first album in 2010 and became the youngest solo male artist to top the music charts. Excuse me. He's now 27 and has worn a number of titles over the years, including Teen Idol was one for many years. And perhaps later on in his life, Bad Boy was another title that was given to him for some of the illegal and the not so nice things he did and said along the course of his journey. But in an interview with GQ magazine just earlier this year, he described his sense of purpose in life. And this is what he said. Singing was supposed to bring such joy. Like, this is what I feel called to do. And my purpose in life, I know that when I open my mouth, people love to hear me sing. I literally started singing on the streets and crowds would form around me to where it's like I'm saying, okay, this could be something. There's this reciprocation of I'm using my gifts to serve people. That's what I loved so much. And I just think more and more as you're a kid and you don't have any identity yet, and you're trying to figure out who you are, and to have everyone saying how good you are, how incredible you are, you just start believing that stuff. And ego sets in. And then that's where insecurities come from. And then you start treating people a certain way and feeling superior and above people. And there's this whole dynamic shift. I just woke up one day and it's just like, who am I? I don't know. And that was scary for me. Interesting words. And just one of the many examples of people who were going one way, but life kind of took them sideways. You know, there are forces in the world today that can take a person's sense of calling and twist it and derail it and dilute it. We have a conviction about what matters, but we end up kind of leaving that behind. And I could well imagine the picture of Samson, if I could picture him, on the cover of GQ magazine. Because his story is much the same. He had a purpose in life that was also derailed. Born with incredible potential, an amazing sense of the calling of God on his life. He forgot what he was born for. He started pursuing the terrible Trinity. Have you heard that phrase, the terrible Trinity? Three things, three amazing forces: money, sex, and power. The terrible Trinity has an incredible power to stuff people up. Money, sex, and power. And so many fatalities and careers and reputations have been littered along the road of life because of the terrible Trinity. Now, money is good, yeah? But it can be used for harm or good. Sex is God's gift, but it can be used for pleasure or to enslave. Power can do incredible things to change the world for good. And yet it seems so many people don't do that. To use these things, to engage with money, sex, and power in ways which are positive, seems to be beyond the scope of so many people to do. Now, in relation to Samson, we're not too sure what his relationship with money was. But the story of his life is one where he seems to have struggled very, very clearly with sex. For Samson, women were his Achilles heel. They were his weakness. They were his downfall. And we read here of this fateful encounter with Delilah, this woman. Sometime later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek whose name was Delilah. And the rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, "See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength, how we can tie him up and overpower him and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." Now, we don't know if Delilah was a Philistine or not. She may not have been. This may not have been anything patriotic at all. But what we do know is that she is a businesswoman. And this was an offer that she simply could not refuse. Now, the Philistine nation was divided into 5 areas with 5 leaders over the city-states. There were 5 city-states in Philistia. Each of them had a leader or a king. Each one of those kings comes to Delilah and said, "We've got a problem, and you're our solution." And they are desperate to get rid of the problem of Samson. And we know they're desperate because they offer her a mind-blowing sum of money to do the job. Each of them offers this 1,100 shekels of silver. Now that in total, by way of contrast or comparison, that's 550 times the average wage of people back then. So if you want to do the maths and say, what is it in today's currency? I went on internet and Google told me average salary of New Zealand at the moment is $82,000. 550 times that is the mind-watering figure of $45 million was the comparable figure this woman was offered to knock off Samson. $45 million. It was a no-brainer for her. For Delilah, it was all about the money. For Samson, when it came to women, it was probably all about the sex. We're told that he fell in love with Delilah, and maybe he did. But the story of Samson, who always gets the upper hand when he's dealing with men, is that he never gets the upper hand when he's dealing with women. He just can't work them out. And sex loomed large for him. He'd just come in the story before this from a fling with a prostitute. If you want to read the story. And as you read the lines of what happens with Delilah, it would be a fairly safe guess to say there was a whole string of sex running through that whole encounter. A desire that turned Samson's brain off. 20 years ago, I was telling young people that we live in a sex-mad culture, and we were and we did. Today, things have gotten even worse to another level. The ability for anyone today, a child of 8 through to an octogenarian, to turn on almost any device in their lounge and find sexually explicit material is just phenomenal. Unfettered, almost. Any engagement with popular culture today, you run the risk of having sexualized content coming your way. It is bringing people down. Just this week, I heard of yet another high-profile Christian leader, Ravi Zacharias, you might know him, who has recently been discovered to have been living a secret, sexualized life that no one knew about, bringing his whole ministry into disrepute, bringing the Christian faith into disrepute yet again. But it's not just for Samson a problem with sex. It seems he had a problem with power as well. Sex, money was Delilah. Power was another one of Samson's. Delilah says to Samson, "Tell me the secret of your great strength, how you can be tied up and subdued." Samson answered her, "If anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I'll become as weak as any other man. And the story goes on. Now, if you look at the life of Samson, it seems to me that he had a real hunger to have power over other people, control. He loved being in a situation where people were dancing to his tune. Look at the way he treated his parents. He was in charge. Very un-Jewish, that whole thing. Think about his wedding, right at the start to that first woman. He begins with a riddle game as part of the wedding celebrations. Now note, it went badly, but he was the one who started it. It was not the companions, it was not the guests at the wedding. He liked to be the one in control. They're having answers that other people were striving to find out. He was the one in charge, thank you very much. And we see it here again with Delilah. He doesn't have to do this. But he's saying, I want to be in charge again. I'm going to string her along, thank you very much. She's going to be dancing to my tune, making a fool out of herself. And I am the one in charge. Samson, I think, loved to be in control. He liked being the one with all the secrets. He liked seeing others floundering. He enjoyed being the player, but didn't realize that he was being played at the same time. You think he would have learned from the wedding? It's almost history repeating, isn't it? A secret he was keeping, a secret joy about the ignorance of other people, until at last a woman wears him down and gets him. With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. And so in this story, we see the terrible trinity at work: money, sex, power. And they are there all around us, aren't they? Out of those three, which one gets you the most? Which one has its claws more into you than the others? What are you doing about that? I just come back to that verse time and time again. Beware the person who thinks they stand, lest they fall. And these three have just an amazing ability to make people fall. Chasing after these things, pursuing what doesn't matter, the problem with them is that it makes us forget what does matter. Let's talk about Samson's hair, shall we? Samson here was the greatest symbol of who he was. Who he was in God and who he was in life. He was a Nazirite. And Nazirites were not to cut their hair for the duration of their vow. For most Nazirites, it was a temporary thing because their vow was temporary. But for Samson, God had said, you are going to be a Nazirite for life, even from before you were born. And the symbol of their hair was a symbol of their special status in God. Now, there was nothing magical about Samson's hair, right? The hair itself was not the source of strength. Verse 28 makes that very clear. But his hair was the symbol of his special identity in God. The God who gave him strength. And there's a funny thing with symbols. How we treat symbols tells us about how we treat what they symbolize. Our attitudes to symbols reveal our attitude to what the symbols point to. Okay? Take this example. When we see people burning an American flag, is anyone in America actually harmed by that? No. They're hundreds and thousands of miles away. But they take offense. Why? Because the good people in America know the bloke with the matches doesn't like them. or anything about them. Your attitude towards the symbol reveals your attitude to what it symbolizes. The symbol in itself is not powerful, but what it symbolizes and the way we relate to it is seen very clearly. And so for Samson, his symbol was his uncut hair. It symbolized a special identity and purpose in God. So ask the question, what was Samson's attitude towards his hair? Now maybe it was acceptable for Samson to tease Delilah about the bowstrings, maybe. Maybe it was acceptable for Samson to string her along, excuse the pun, with the new ropes, maybe. But you got to ask the question, why, oh why, Samson, would you bring Delilah's attention to your hair in round number 3? And say, oh, you can weave my hair into a loom. What on earth is he doing there? Bringing her to focus on the symbol for it all. Is he thick? Or is he treating what it symbolizes cheaply? And I think that's what's going on. He was having too much fun. He no longer really cared about his identity in God or his purpose in God. His attitude towards the symbol revealed his attitude towards what it symbolized. And then he treats his special status as being so worthless that he will give it away to someone who can't be trusted. Yeah? Verse 17, he tells her everything. No razor has been used on my head, because I have been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man. You see? What's Samson's core identity here? Who was he meant to be? Hear that from his own lips, and you'll hear these words, dedicated to God. From my mother's womb. That's who he was. What about his life purpose? You know, what was he meant to do? Samson was gifted to free a nation. That was the calling on his life. That's what every other judge was called to do as well. But because he was chasing after what didn't matter, he neglected what did matter above everything else and treated it with contempt. And it's not just him, because we are children of God, aren't we? Are we not? We are ambassadors for Jesus, aren't we? We are the redeemed of the Savior, aren't we? We are the mouthpiece of the gospel. We are those holding forth the word of truth. We are the church of God, aren't we? Isn't that who we are? Isn't that what we are called to do? You know? Isn't that what should be held on to for all time, with all of our energy, instead of pursuing other things? I was listening to a Kiwi Christian leader a few weeks ago, and he said this one comment that just stuck in my mind. He said, I've spent years trying to figure out why Christians so quickly turn to Netflix instead of investing in their discipleship. He said, I just can't work this out. Why do Christians go to Netflix so quickly and neglect growing as a disciple? It's got me baffled, he said. I'm trying to work this one out. And so maybe the story of Samson is for us quite relevant. Maybe it's there to be a warning for us, do you think? It's not just an anecdote, a fascinating story. Maybe God put it there for a reason. To ask us the question, what are you chasing in life? What are you pursuing? What matters? For Samson, the result is no laughing matter. She calls out to Samson, this lady Delilah, "The Philistines are on you." He wakes from his sleep and thought, "I'll go out before, shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had left him. Oh, what a sentence. He did not know that the Lord had left him. And then the Philistines seized him. They gouged out his eyes. They took him down to Gaza. Binding him with bronze shackles, they set him to grinding grain in the prison. And there is a deliberate irony in that whole passage, because the word for prison is the same word that was used for the ropes and the bowstrings, the word tying, being bound. He was bound with ropes and bowstrings. Now he's bound in prison. He thought he was playing with the ropes before. It's all a bit of fun. And he did not realize the things that we play with often will come to bind us. And so for Samson, there is a binding. The things that the place he'd never think he would end up in. Being bound, that's where he is. But for Samson too, there's also a shrinking, I think. He's become the sum of his world. Samson prayed to God as he was in chains performing for the Philistines. "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just one more time. And let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." And then Samson reached toward the 2 central pillars on which the temple stood, and bracing himself against them, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other, Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." And he pushed with all his might. And down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than when he lived. But this was no glorious ending. It really wasn't, All the other judges, they rallied the nation. They recruited an army. They mobilized the people's heart to defeat the oppressors and gain their freedom again. Think about them, Deborah. Think about Gideon. Think about Ehud. All these people. And all Samson cares about is Samson. I just want revenge for my 2 eyes. It's all about him. He's become small because it's all about Samson. He never lived out his purpose. Never did. He never lived out his calling. And so, question here for us is, disciple of Jesus, will you? Will you? Or are you chasing things that don't actually matter? We started talking about Justin Bieber at the start. Let's finish with Justin too. This is what he said. "I came to a place," he says, "where I was just like, God, if you're real, I need you to help me because I can't do this on my own. It's like I'm struggling so hard. Every decision I make is out of my own selfish ego. So I'm just like, what is it that you want from me? You put all these desires in my heart for me to sing and perform and to make music. Where are these coming from? Why is this in my heart? What do you want me to do with it? What's the point? What is the point of everything? What is the point of me being on this planet?" And what happened when Bieber asked for help is that someone or something answered. He suddenly had a certainty. If God forgives me, and He loves me, and He set me these things in motion, if He put these desires in my heart, then I'm going to trust Him. I'm going to trust him. And if you read what he says, I'd say, yeah, I think he does. What is the heart of the matter? Pursuing what doesn't matter makes us neglect what does. And the result is no laughing matter. So what are you here for in life, really? What is your purpose in God? What is distracting you? And what decision will you make right now, in this moment, to change that? How will waking up tomorrow be different from how you woke up yesterday? Let me finish with one verse which I think is clarifying. Therefore, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him. Let's pray. Jesus, I see so much of Samson in me at times. Perhaps we can all say the same thing. Let us not forget, Lord, who we are in you and what you have called us to do in this life. And may we hold on to those things so tightly that nothing will distract us and nothing will divert us, and we will finish the race. Amen.